Before we get started, you are going to notice that some of these bumpers are missing. This table is in the middle of being rebuilt, so they may be added later. But if those bumpers are not there, it's not going to hurt anything. In fact, after you finish this procedure, your cells won't be slamming open, so you really don't have to have those bumpers there. So the first thing you're going to do is disconnect all of the Respot cells by pulling off the little carb links that go to them, except for the 7 cell, because remember that one is fixed. And you're also going to pull off the link right here at the bell crank. Then you're going to set this link to 3.5 inches in length. The book calls for this to be 3 1/16 of an inch, but I have found on these tables anyway, that doesn't work. It doesn't open the cell far enough, and because it's so short, it tends to drive into the wireway instead of along it. So start with this at 3.5 inches. Now this first adjustment you're going to do is going to simultaneously set the full open stop and the 7 cell. So using the stop bolt on the bell crank, close and open the cells using the shifter cam and hold the cells open with the shifter cam being pulled up. Then adjust that screw until the rear finger of the 7 cell has approximately 1/4 inch play from the bumper. Now this is important because this will set the full open stop so that the cells are not trying to physically open further than they can go. And you don't want the fingers tightly open. The point of this is to have a little tiny bit of play here. This adjustment actually will vary from cell to cell depending on the slop each cell has. So 1/4 inch or less, as long as there is a little bit of slight movement here. Once you get that set up, go back to the shifter cam, close it all the way, and open it to check the cell, make sure it operates smoothly, and that this adjustment is holding. Now you're going to add the rest of the cells to the Respot cell system, going up the rows, starting at the 7 pin, go to the 4 pin next. Use the carburetor link to adjust that cell. So in the full open position, once again, holding the shifter cam all the way up, you have approximately 1/4 inch of play or less on the rear finger of the cell. Each cell you add on there, go back to the shifter cam and fully close and fully open it to check the operation. Then once you finish with the 4 cell, go up to the 2, then the 1, and then go back to this row starting at the 8, go up that row, the 9 row, and then finish at the 10 pin. Once you get to the 10 pin, all of the Respot cells have now been set and adjusted for their fully open position, and this is what it should look like. Let's enjoy some smooth, cool Respot cell action. Now that the Respot cells are all set up and you've already set the open stop adjustment, it's time to set the closed stop adjustment. So you go back up here to the shifter cam and the stop bolt on here, and what you're going to do is loosen the jam nut and turn this bolt in all the way or far enough to where when you close the cells fully, this does not touch the stop on the table, so the cells bottom out. So turn that in and then move the cells to the fully closed position. Then unscrew the bolt until it touches the stop on the table. Then at that point, unscrew the bolt 4 more turns and lock the jam nut. This will set the full close position of the Respot cells. This is important because this will stop the cells from closing further than they can physically go. And it will allow the cells to close more than enough to lock onto the pins, but not close so far that the studs actually bottom out the fingers. And when you have this set right, that's about how much space you should have between the end of the finger and the studs. This adjustment will set the cam follower pressure for the shifter cam, for the cam follower for spotting. The cam follower that opens the Respot cells during spotting. Because you've already messed with other Respot cell adjustments on the table, assume that the shifter cam tie rod is too long. So the first thing you are going to do is loosen the jam nuts at both ends. By the way, the rod ends are opposite thread, so you don't need to take a bolt out of one end. And then turn the rod to make it as short as you can make it. That will raise the shifter cam. This is extremely important because if that rod is too long and you force the table into spotting, it will cause a bind and either bend that rod or break the bell crank or cause some other damage. Then make sure the Respot cells are fully open and cycle the machine to put the table into spotting. Stop the table just as the cups start to pull back, which will position the cam follower approximately right about there in that area. Then you're going to lengthen that tie rod to bring the shifter cam down onto the cam follower. Turn that rod until it's hand tight so that when you're not touching any of this, you cannot spin the cam follower freely with your finger. But if you lift the cam, the shifter cam and hold it up, you should be able to turn the cam follower freely, just like this. Once you have met that condition, go back to the tie rod and tighten the jam nuts. This is extremely important. The book suggests that this clearance between the two be between 1/100th and 2/100ths of an inch. The point is that this should be tight enough that it fully opens the Respot cells, but not so tight that it causes a bind that causes damage somewhere else. This last adjustment involves adjusting the lockingness or lockability of each Respot cells, the tightness or the way it locks on to standing pins. The book puts this as one of the first steps, and you can do it at the beginning or you can do it at the end. This is assuming that the Respot cells are already adjusted so that they will at least pick up the pins. If they're too tight, it's not going to grab the pins for you to do this. And if you're not sure, you can do this with each individual cell from underneath the table or with the table out of the machine using either the gauge or a bowling pin. If you have the gauge, this distance right here, when it's set right, in about the middle of the cell, using this part of the gauge, is 2 inches. So to check it with the gauge, stick it in here like this and slide it down. It should stop in about the middle. Okay? I prefer to use bowling pins to do this because the table does not respot a bunch of gauges. It respots actual bowling pins. So with a full rack on the deck on spot, make the table, pick up the pins, and then stop the table when it goes up with all the pins hanging from the cells. Then, using a 1/4-inch wrench, go to the adjusting screw here and make any adjustments that you need to. What you are after is all of the pins should hang from the cell from the top of the top stripe right here. So if my finger was the Respot cell finger, the pin should be hanging just like that. And that's with AMF pins, by the way. So adjust each cell until you have that on all 10 cells. Now you can run the table through several spot, respot, and spotting cycles with the cells closed to check the operation, make any fine-tuning adjustments if you need to, and so on. And then you're pretty much done. And when you do this right, this is what it looks like.